Wonderful. All right, well, we'll give people just another minute or two to sign on before we officially get started. But how's everybody doing? Are we all in Colorado? Is this like the first time that we're all in the same state for a call like this?
I think so.
Yeah, all over Colorado, but I mean within the Denver limits, right?
Right.
Ashwin, are you closer to Boulder or are you close? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we're in Boulder County. It's just on the outskirts. So it probably takes us 15 minutes to get into Boulder.
Okay.
But I grew up in this area, so it's very familiar versus the south part of the city. So
You're a native.
not a native.
Oh, you said you grew up here. It sounded like a native.
Been here a long time. Spent a
Okay.
majority of my life in Colorado. Yeah.
Got it.
And Kalia, is that a real drawing in the background, a picture, or is that you can touch
It is, but I didn't do it. I do get
Okay.
this ask. I appreciated it and purchased it.
It looks beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, so I think we are just about to get everything kicked off and we are recording. So welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Kalia Garrido and I head up marketing and events here at Great Data Minds, which of course is now a Hike 2 company. Great Data Minds is a collective of passionate data activists, and we are on a mission to change and modernize the world of data. We do this in a couple different ways. The first is that we have our services arm, and this is where we do strategic planning, education, and the deployment of critical data projects. This all happens at hike2.com. In addition to our data services, Hike2 is a fully functional and best-in-class innovation consultancy specializing in digital transformation and strategy, design, and implementations. Now, when it comes to our data and analytics community content and conversation, just like the one we're going to have today, you can find more about our events that we do at hike2.com/events. You can also find Great Data Minds on Eventbrite, and all of our recordings are going to show up on YouTube. So please make sure that you follow us there. So a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. This is a webinar, so of course your cameras and microphones are off, but we do encourage engagement via the chat, via Q&A, and we can reserve a little bit of time at the end of the event as well if you'd like to hold your question for them. We are, of course, recording, and like I said, the recording will be shared back out on YouTube, so make sure to follow both Great Data Minds and Hike 2 over there. So allow me to do some introductions for my guests today. First is our special guest. We have Ashwin Bala. He has over 15 years of experience specializing in transforming data into powerful business advantages. He has successfully led the development, and probably deployment, I'm sure, and delivery of multi-million-dollar data-driven technology solutions for Fortune 100 companies, medium enterprises, and government clients. And he is currently spearheading a holistic data and analytics transformation at Flexential. Ashwin, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, we're excited. Okay, and then my partner in crime is Kuldeep Singh. He is the Chief Data Officer at Hike 2. He has over 20 years of experience in data and digital strategy across sectors like finance, retail, and philanthropy. And here at Hike 2, he drives business value by using AI automation and data governance to improve decision-making and operational efficiency. Kuldeep, thank you for joining me as well.
Thank you, Kalia. Thank you for the introductions. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. All right, we're ready to take it away.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. I think this is going to be a very exciting and engaging thought leadership conversation. As Kalia mentioned, I'm the Chief Data Officer at Hike 2. In my role, I advise clients modernize our internal offerings, and I also have been a data enthusiast for now 24 years, right? So this conversation is all not about me, but it's about my guest, Ashwin Bala. And I'm really thrilled to have you here, Ashwin. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yep. And so today, what I would like to explore, Ashwin, is what we do in these thought leadership sessions, which is really kind of understand the leader's inspiring journey, right, into data analytics and beyond.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that we can learn from each other, right? Even though we are in different industries, We might have different paths into data and analytics. We might be solving very specific company or a firm or an industry challenge. But when you listen to other data leaders talking about how they built, how they circumvented some of the challenges that they had, and how they engaged with the whole organization, a lot of lessons, a lot of commonalities, especially for new leaders, who are taking on, who might have been a data engineering leader, but now they're kind of have been promoted into more of a leader over the enterprise data and analytics, right, for the whole company. I mean, there's a step up, and there's a lot of learnings that can come from such conversations. So I'm really excited about discussing some of that and your own journey. So with that, I think the first topic is near and dear to me. I love to talk about this specific topic that I'm going to bring up, which is to really get to know the leader, right? And so as we start our conversation here, Ashwin, what I think is that every leader has a story, right? What they have learned, in the work that they do, but also as part of their life journey, right? I mean, the lessons they have learned, and there's a lot of what we bring to work is from what we learn outside of our work. So why don't we start off with that, if you don't mind? And so maybe, just give us another introduction. I know Kalia did such a great job of introducing you, but just wanted to know, who you are, what are you doing now, what are you interested in learning, what LinkedIn course are you taking, or university course? Just talk us through that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again for hosting this, Kuldeep. So my journey started in consulting, and I learned data and analytics on the job. I wasn't formally trained in school, didn't take a specific major in university around data science or data engineering or computer science. And so in consulting, as you know, right, you get exposed to a lot of different situations, a lot of different industries, a lot of different use cases, and that accelerates your understanding of how to apply technology to solve those specific business problems. And so when I got into consulting, my very first project was actually a MicroStrategy reporting project where we were working at a federal client, and we were taking their 300 plus reports that were in Crystal reports, and we wanted to migrate them into MicroStrategy. And as the analyst on the project, the lowest on the totem pole, we had to print out every single report, and we had to highlight, here's the attributes, here's the metrics. There's much more intelligent ways to do this, but this was 15 years ago, right? And so it was one of those experiences where it really helps you to understand, how do you solve this problem of migrating from a legacy platform to a new platform? What are metrics? What are dimensions? How do you want to structure the data? It was a really good grounding in how we think about business intelligence back there. Right? And so, like I said, everything I've learned has been on the job. And so moving from kind of the reporting phases, which is on the front facing with the customer, moving back into learning how a data warehouse works and how data engineering works, and moving data from one place to the other. That's how I came up within my career. Moving on from just doing single projects to looking across an entire portfolio of projects, and then doing the client relationship management, was my career arc in the consulting space. Leaving consulting and going within enterprise was really, how do I take all of my learnings that I've had in my decade in consulting and apply that to the enterprise space and build something that I could be proud of and say, this is mine, right? This is my team, this is my philosophy, this is my strategy in terms of how we drive that forward. And so my current role is at a mid-sized data center provider, Flexential. You've probably heard of Flexential. There's a lot of buzz in the data center space right now because of the advent of AI and the need to have a lot of space and a lot of power to enable the computing power and speed that we need for AI. And so Flexential is a high growth organization. We have 41 data centers across the United States right now, looking to build more in 26, 27, 28. And a core part of our strategy is, how do we use data and technology to drive better decision making, to drive better behavior, to drive better incentive structures, so that when we go choose a new site or when we go to contract with our clients, we're making the best decisions with a long-term focus in mind. historically, the team that I inherited was more around the data jockeying or the movement of data from one system to the other. But we started to shift the dynamic in the last 9 months that I've been here to start focusing in on what are the questions the business is asking? What are the decisions they're trying to make? What are the insights and actions that are going to be driven off of this? So that we can define the right analytics and define the right data to enable those outcomes. That shift, that mindset shift of just being a team that's moving data and managing the data to being a business enablement component and being a service-oriented organization has been a little bit of a different lens for the team to have to adopt. But that's also enabled us to have deeper conversations with our business partners and better relationships and build that rapport and become more of a strategic partner. So excited of where we are right now in that continuum. Excited that I'm able to use my years of experience to come in here and be able to apply that. And then also excited to bring in partners like Hike2 to help us as we go on that journey, because we are fairly immature in this space. And it's good to have a sounding board like you, Kuldeep, and Mike, right? To be able to say, hey, here's what we're thinking for the next iteration to get to that inflection point. How have you seen this done in other settings? Being able to leverage our partners and thought leaders in this space has been extremely helpful for us as we go down that journey.
That's a really good summary of what you have done, including what you're doing right now. So thank you for sharing your journey with us here. So Ashwin, amongst everything that you've done in the last 15 years, right, as you come into work every day, I mean, you mentioned several aspects of it, right? A high growth company, you mentioned your own desire to kind of make a difference, right? How you started off MicroStrategy back in the days, right? I also started off with MicroStrategy. And it used to be a great platform because it was a great introduction to how business really is leveraging business intelligence, right? Otherwise, from a data warehousing, so you touched upon that a little bit. Today, I mean, what brings you to work every day? I mean, you've been a data leader for a long time. What sparks that energy? What sparks that passion that you bring? I don't know if you plan on being a data leader for the rest of your career or but talk to us a little bit about your passions and your desires and your, what's in your mind.
So when I think about when I went to school to be a mechanical engineer. And in engineering, it's very process oriented. And we always talked about the scientific method. And data and analytics is you use the scientific method. You start with a hypothesis, then you go and do your experiment, which is your data engineering, your data analysis, right? But instead of using chemicals and construction material, you're using data as your medium. You validate your hypothesis, you build models, you confirm that it's either true or false. And then instead of writing a white paper at the end of your experiment, you're building out a data visualization. And that visualization can be used by a multitude of audiences. So you want to build it in a way that speaks to your audience so that you can narrate that story of here's the hypothesis, here's what we found, here's the findings and the insights, and then here's how you can leverage that as well. And I think for me, being able to break down problems into small compartments and small modules that we can solve, and then being able to bring up that next generation of data analytics teams, that's what sparks my interest on a day-to-day basis. Building teams that understand how we can use data to drive our business forward and drive those business objectives forward. That's really where my passion lies. In addition to that, when I think about the team construct itself, right? The first consulting firm I was with, the saying or our tagline was high performance delivered, right? And so how do you optimize and lean into the strengths of each individual team member within that team to bring out what their passions are and what they're interested in and optimize their execution on a day-to-day basis? That's really something that I'm passionate about and continue to foster with my leaders as well to make sure that they're bringing up that next generation of data professional.
That's very exciting. So what I was hearing, Ashwin, is that, as you've continued to grow in your own career, right, and also bringing it back to your education, which was the foundation of where you're today, right? And by the way, I'm also a mechanical engineer. I've only been in that field for about a year, but I know exactly what you're talking about. It's a very structured way of thinking. There's a process oriented. So are some of what you do today, those values, those principles, I mean, did you gain that from your education? How did you evolve as a leader? With the principles that you bring to work today. One thing I know about you is you're very resourceful, right? And you're driving When the situation gets challenging, and all of us in the industry feel that, right? I mean, and different industries will feel that during different, periods in their growth path. But one thing that I've noticed is that the leaders who are resourceful, who are ready to still move the dial and think about the continuum, think about the future, right? They generally are moving faster towards their goals, right? And then they're also bringing people along. So, I mean, are those some of the values and principles that you take from job to job as a data leader? Because you need a lot of that resoluteness, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, being able to be gritty, right? And finding the yes in any situation, and finding those outcomes that can be a win-win-win. Win for you, win for the team, win for the organization. And that was something that we were drilled into us as part of consulting, because ultimately you had to show the value of the engagement to the client, and you had to be able to define that for the team as well. Sometimes in consulting, as you know, there's a lot of challenging situations where you have to drag a team through, and you have to inspire them to come to the best thinking. Because at the end of the day, conflict is not a negative thing. And I try to coach this with my team. Conflict sometimes brings the best thinking, and we need to be comfortable bringing that conflict to the fore and having those hard conversations, whether it's internally within the team or with our customers, business customers, external customers, whoever that is, right? Being able to be open and have that transparency and that vulnerability to have those conversations, very, very important. But going back to your question, where did I absorbed a lot of that from the leaders that I had when I was early on in my consulting career. Every leader is going to have their own leadership style. And you never want to try to mimic anybody. You want to create your own authentic style, because that's the only thing that you can lean back on at the end of the day. And so picking the pieces that resonate with you as you go through your career and say, yeah, I identify that and I like that, and I'm going to borrow that and put it into your bailiwick, so that when you become a leader and you're put into that position, you've got all the positive attributes. I'm not saying I've only got positive attributes. I 100% agree I've got some negative attributes, and I'll continue to work on those. But being able to lean in on the areas where you're strong, and then finding people that can help cover up your blind spots, that's how I've found success.
Oh, well, that's very nice to hear, Ashwin. I think you bring up a really good point, which is mentorship, right? I mean, as leaders, seeking mentors, whether they are more from a technology perspective or whether they are from a leadership perspective, but also then turning back and giving back, right? Being mentors, because being mentor is also a hard thing to do, because you don't have all the answers. However, it's your ability to be vulnerable, and you can learn from your mentee. And that kind of drives excellence, and on both sides. So
Right.
moving away from, thank you for sharing. I mean, I think this was a really great introduction beyond executive bios and LinkedIn profiles, right? Just understanding how did we get where we got, and so thank you for sharing some of your personal journey with us. So moving us forward, Ashwin, I want to kind of start talking a little bit about the data transformation journey that you are on. And without going into too much of the proprietary Flexential, information that you can share, but I know that Flexential is on a transformative journey, just because of where the industry is. And and you joined Flexential, it's been about a year now, or maybe more. And when you accepted the job and you took this opportunity, it seemed like it was greenfield. And so talk to us a little bit about Flexential, its transformative journey. What was your experience when you first came in? How did you kind of understand the equations of what you were adopting or inheriting rather, right? And how did you initially start thinking, am I going to make a difference here? What were some of the steps that you took?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We are an organization in transition, and transition because we're at a specific inflection point where there's hyper growth in this industry. When I first got into the seat, what I did is I went out and I met with all the leaders within the organization. And what was the resounding feedback I got is that everybody wanted data. Everybody wanted to automate their process. They wanted to get their folks out of bringing multiple sources together into their own Excel spreadsheet. There were some folks that showed me Excel workbooks that were at 98% and couldn't keep going. They couldn't add any more data to it, right? Everybody wanted something. There was a tremendous amount of appetite. And so then we had to go into, okay, we got to prioritize where we can actually make an impact. I will say that the challenge that the team was facing previously was that they were very focused on, we need to bring every piece of data within the organization into a central repository before we could do anything outbound. So instead of focusing on what does the business want to do with the data and then bringing in what was actually necessary, they were doing too much in that data integration and data management space. No fault of the team, it was just the wrong focus at that point in time. And so the shift that we made was, one, we expanded our remit. So instead of just saying, hey, you guys do the analysis business, and then you tell us exactly what you want us to bring in, we started with the end in mind, right? What are you trying to achieve? What are the decisions you're trying to make? What are the insights you're trying to accomplish? And then what are the data points that we need? Because a lot of it was already in the data warehouse, or what do we need to go and augment to bring into it? So that shift from we are a technology team to we are a business partner and we are going to help you business folks, that was a big shift for the team. The second thing was we needed to get away from all data needs to be centralized. We went through these, and you know this as well, Kuldeep. We went through this period of we need to build a data warehouse that has all of our data, and then we need to build data marts. And at the end of 2 years, our business has changed, but the data marts are still based on the 2 years ago. So now we got to go do another big project, and we need to get away from that, right? We need to get to a federated model that says, hey, our CRM data lives here. We bring in the core pieces of CRM data into our data warehouse. The rest of it we can report out of. And so that mindset shift of getting people to be comfortable with reporting directly from the system or pulling in raw data from the system and reporting on that, that was where we needed to get our business customers as well as our internal team. So that was one. The second thing was we didn't have the right skills, knowledge, and aptitude within the team itself. So identifying what are the roles and responsibilities we need today to be successful, as well as what we need 18 months or 2 years out, and then writing new job descriptions, creating a new plan and an organizational structure that could support different parts of the business, but not focusing again on centralized and we are the only people that can touch the data, but thinking about how do we build a federated model that we can coach and mentor an analyst in marketing, coach and mentor an analyst in sales, coach and mentor an analyst in product, so that we do the heavy lifting from an enterprise perspective. And then we've got a dotted line into each of the other groups where we are coaching on best practices, standards, and helping them to be self-sufficient. Because ultimately, for me, success is going to be each organization or each department within the organization is able to self-serve their needs and then come to us when they have a big, complex, hairy problem that they can't solve on their own. Right? And so
Well, yeah,
some of
please.
those lessons, data doesn't have to be centralized.
Yeah.
Data modeling is a lost art, and Mike has come in and helped us with that tremendously, right? This new generation that is using a lot of these plug and play tools, low code, no code tools, don't really understand the need for data modeling because these tools are they try to simplify it too much. But data modeling is very, very important, especially when you've got a unique industry like we do and not very mature. And then data literacy is the last one. We have a lot of folks that talk about the same concepts, but don't have the same meaning when they talk about those concepts. So revenue, for example, how marketing looks at revenue versus how product looks at revenue. We need to bring those teams together so that we get a consistent view of what does revenue mean on an organizational level, so that everybody up and down from our executive team to our individual contributors understands what we're talking
No, that's excellent. I mean, I think you spoke about several different capabilities that you had to kind of focus on, starting with building those relationships and really entering an organization and being an active listener. And then I think the key thing is because you can get, what I've noticed is that leaders can come in and they'll, in large organizations, mid-sized organizations, and then you get inundated with all of these requests. And it requires a little bit of that skill set, right? How do you kind of maneuver the politics in your first 60, 90, 120 days, 100 days? And so as you were going through your 30, 60, 90, 100-day cycle, what were some of the key challenges that you faced? I feel like the challenges that you face is probably what other leaders are going to face if they're starting that journey.
Yeah, 100%. I think the biggest thing to me was making sure we had the right team to execute, right? So shifting the mindset in the team, bringing in the additional skill set, working with our HR department to identify the right people to bring in and hiring them and bringing them in and coaching and mentoring it. That's one side of the equation. The other side was, how do we get that higher level executive buy-in to say this is the path that we want to go, and we trust that Ashwin knows what he's talking about, right? And so sitting down and putting together a collective of leaders within the organization to have a steering committee, because my voice can only go as far as I can speak. If I've got 5, 6 other people that are saying the same things to their teams, to their peers, to other folks within the organization, it's a much more powerful message that can resonate and radiate across the organization. So identifying who those stakeholders were going to be and getting them aligned with, here's our long-term strategy, here's the vision that we have for data and analytics, and then have them help me be my conduit into the rest of the organization. Those were two. And then the last thing was taking a look at what we actually have in our data management sphere and our data ecosystem, and doing a deep dive of, okay, here's all the sources. Not all of it was very well documented. And in order to tell that story of why is it so complex, why does a project take 2 months, right? You need to be able to draw pictures and walk people through that. And that was a huge miss for the team in the past, was that they would go off in a black box and work, but people were asking the question, well, why does it take so long? If you have a picture and you can describe, hey, this is what we do at step 1, this is what we do in step 2, and bringing people into the fore so that they are in the tent and they understand it, and we demystify the entire process. Those were some of the things that I focused on in those first 100 days there.
Yeah, that's great, Ashwin, because I think what I'm hearing is, there is the science of data and analytics, right? Which is where we're talking about a whole bunch of platforms and, how things are actually done. Sometimes the way we speak as data professionals, could be a mystery of sorts to our stakeholders.
Right.
Like yesterday, somebody mentioned to me, data governance platform. They understand Salesforce platform because it's, helping their clients, all right, or their business processes. They understand, some of these things, right, whichever industry you're in, like point of sale system, right? They know exactly what that does. But when you start talking about data governance system, that's like lower on the totem pole, and how do you kind of connect with them? And the second thing I'm hearing is, beyond all of that, there is a leader brings an enabling skill set, right? And that whether it's through drawing pictures, telling stories, creating excitement, and I think you spoke about literacy, and we'll go into that a little bit more in detail. So thank you for sharing that with us, because those are all really critical things as you get into an organization, and in the first 100 days or 150 days or first year, right? I mean, it's really critical to build that credibility. The last, before I move into the next segment, which is really about leadership and team building, and I know that you kind of mentioned a little bit about that. Before we go there, I just wanted to understand, so as you entered the organization, you met all of these business leaders, they told you what their problems were. Did you have a methodology, an approach, that you followed in terms of organizing your thoughts and then presenting it back? I mean, I'm going a little bit into the tactics, but I think that's important, right? I mean, so that you don't get inundated in the ocean of requests that are coming. Maybe some of the audience members might benefit from that.
Yeah, actually, so once I had the team kind of mobilized, I brought everybody to Denver in July, and we invited key stakeholders from the business to actually come in and tell us, how do they interact with data today? What are their prior pain points? And then what are their objectives for 24 and 25? And how can we as a group help them move that forward? And out of that, we created a backlog of, I think we had 20 items of things that they needed. And we just put that into our backlog so that we can execute on those initiatives. And as we have capacity, and re-engage with those leaders to say, hey, we know that this is something that you talked about back in July. Is it still imperative for you? And start working on it. Our capacity planning, we use safe agile methodology. So it's on a set 16-week cycle. So it makes it easy for us to be able to maintain a backlog of needs from the business and then accommodate that to kind of fill in the gaps as we go forward. We're going to do the same exercise because now it's been about 6 months. We're going to do the same exercise next month with a different group of stakeholders to bring in more voices from the business. And ultimately, we want to be able to deliver the things that are of highest value, right? But it's sometimes hard when a leader only sees their silo of the business to be able to say, hey, marketing's need is higher than sales need, right? And so we, and I'm coaching my team on this, is that we have to be the connective tissue between the different departments. We have to be the ones to understand the organizational strategy and pull the thread from here's what your ask is at the tactical level to how does it tie into our overall business strategy. And if it ties into our business strategy in more ways than one, it likely has higher value. And so we need to work on the things that are more pressing, that drive additional value, not just to that one team, but to maybe cross-functional teams as well. And what we've also found is that there's times where two leaders are asking for the same thing, and bringing them together, solving it with one data solution or one data product meets the needs for multiple. So we've done a lot more of bringing outside voices in, as well as always checking back in with the business to let them know, hey, we hear you. We don't have capacity now, but we will have capacity in the next PI or in the next 2 weeks period. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. I mean, I think one of the skill sets that's kind of, I'm hearing that data teams need are the critical thinking skills, right? And in fact, there's a whole industry that can come and offer you critical thinking courses, on a repetitive basis. But it's such the curiosity, the ability to connect the dots, right? I mean, I think data leaders, enterprise data, they're in the best position to do that because human resources organization is thinking human resources because it's a whole world out there. And financial CFO's organization is thinking about what they have to do, and they have a lot of responsibilities to regulators, stakeholders. So that's great to know that as a data leader, you're coaching your team on the critical thinking skills. If questions can be asked, and how do you kind of tell a story, right? Once the answers are provided. So that's great, and that kind of brings me into the team aspect. Right? I want to kind of talk a little bit about your reflections and aspirations there, from a team building perspective. I know, Ashwin, prior to Flexential, you were in a senior leadership executive role with another firm, right? And you speak, I think you've mentioned to me in the past where, there was significant impact from the strategies that you were putting in. Then you were also building data champions, right, from across the organization. And talk to me a little bit about, how do you go about building the skill sets, one, within your team, right, where you have direct influence over, and then how do you build data skills for the whole organization? I think you mentioned literacy program. In the past, you have kind of spoken to me about community of practice. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. It is really important right now, especially with the advent of AI and with how fast technology is moving, that every individual is responsible, right? We can be accountable as a leader, but they need to be responsible for driving that journey independently. And so as part of our goal setting and as part of the mandate that I have for my team is that everybody needs to have an objective around their own skill development, because maintaining status quo in terms of your own personal skills, you're going to become obsolete very quickly. And so with the speed and the veracity that we see technology moving, I encourage all my team members, whether we're doing it within our four walls or you're just curious about another concept, right? Go learn it. Because ultimately, if you learn it and there's applicability into a specific business problem, we can bring in a new technology. We can bring in a new thought process around how we solve those. For the broader organization, some of the things that we've done is we've set up a data community of practice that meets on a monthly basis. We set up a 3-tiered structure that says, here's where you are as a viewer, here's where you are as an explorer, and here's where you are as a creator. We're following the Tableau terminology because Tableau is our data analytics tool. And here's the core skills that you need to graduate from one to the other, and gamified it a little bit so that it's fun, right? At the end of the day, if we're not having fun in the community of practice, we've kind of missed the boat on that one. So we've introduced a holiday challenge where we gave them a data set around Christmas movies or holiday movies, and they had to build a coolest visualization. And we had a big prize for the winner that came up with something creative. So trying to gamify it, trying to make it fun, identifying the core skills to go from one level to the other, giving people badges within our recognition platform so that you can identify as a data community of practice viewer, bronze level, silver level, gold level, incenting people to want to participate so that they can be more effective analysts within their specific functions. The way that we created our curriculum was based off of, we used the Tableau resources a lot of the content that they have there. And then the team has also created a lot of videos so that they can do it asynchronously. So you don't have to come participate in the hour-long meeting. You can review the video offline. We've got demo and dummy data sets, and so that they can go into Tableau and build by themselves as well. The last piece of this is around data governance. And as you know, data governance can be a big overhead in an organization, and people don't see the value off the bat. But we picked the areas that create the most pain for our business, and then gone about bringing together the core team that's necessary to define what are the attributes, what are the metrics, what is the calculation, the numerators and denominators, what is the frequency we want to report on it. And then we're building a very light business glossary. We don't have a data governance platform right now, but we are going to get one in the future. But we built a business glossary so that there's consistency across the organization when we talk about revenue, customer classification, those kinds of attributes. And the goal is to continue to pick up steam, hopefully bring in some additional help to go faster on the data governance side, and then eventually get a data governance platform so we can centralize all of that knowledge in one space.
Yeah, that's great. And one thing, a couple of points here, right, based upon what I heard. There was a global leader I used to work for who had this ambition. We had a LMS in that global company, learning management system, and he used to kind of advocate for, hey, these are all of this is the menu of skills. Like he used to kind of bring the analogy of McDonald's, right? You walk in there and you have all these options, and you can pick the core food product that you're ordering, a burger or whatever, and then you can choose like a few other things that makes it a full meal, right?
Yeah.
So he used to kind of talk up to us about, this is your core skill to complete you and your plate, in front of you. What are the other things that you're going to pick up, beyond your core skills, right? That's one thing. And then second thing, around governance, once people see the win, right, the groups that you are engaging with, then they become your champions, right?
Right.
They become the activists because they can now tell the story of how it got better for them. So thank you for sharing some of those insights with us, which takes me into, the future. As data and analytic leaders, we have to always be on the lookout for where we're heading. And not only just from how the company can leverage, what's coming, but also how would we keep our staff excited, interested, right? Not only in the task in front of them, but also what they hear in the industry.
Right.
And while this conversation is not about AI and data science, algorithms or anything like that, but what are you seeing, are some of the industry disruptors, technology disruptors, that are coming your way, right? And what should we be worried about, or rather excited about, on the positive side in the next 5 years or 10 years?
I think looking at it from the employee experience, right? Every employee is going to want to work for an organization that is more progressive when it comes to technology, because people that are going through school right now, they're using technology, they're using AI, they're using more cutting edge tools than maybe we are within our four walls, right? And so they are looking for organizations that are a little bit more progressive in the thinking for how they can push the envelope forward. So from an employee value proposition, we have an imperative to be more data driven, to be more technology focused, to lean in more on those advancing technologies. We owe it to ourselves and to our current employees as well as our future employees to do that. From an organizational and just setting what's the value proposition against our competitors, right? What's our competitive advantage? We are going to have to lean in more and make more informed and de-risked bets in order to get those bets right more often than not. Because if we're not doing that, our competitors are going to be doing that, and we're going to continue being a mid-sized player. And we don't want to be a mid-sized player forever, right? And so we owe it to ourselves. And then from an industry perspective, data centers are at the central point of AI and everything going on in the AI disruption that is that. And so from an industry perspective, we owe it to the industry to also take a leading voice in terms of what works, what doesn't work, what are good use cases, and come back and also have the conversation around what are not good use cases for AI. Because AI is a very expensive, not just from a processing, but from its environmental impact, the amount of power we use, the footprints that we take up. So being able to say, hey, that's maybe not a really good use case. We've tested it out. We have the data to show you the stress that it causes on a data center when you go and use those specific, I don't have a specific use case for you right now, Kuldeep, but we owe it to the industry to be able to do some of those initial experiments because we have the infrastructure to support it and be able to come back and say that 5-hour problem that you're trying to solve in 5 minutes actually causes this kind of impact. And so we don't recommend that. Or come up with an alternate solution that we can cache some of it, or we can slow down the amount of power and CPU that is required there.
No, thank you for that. I mean, very inspiring. I think the message is, students in universities across the globe, they are learning things that we are adopting in industry, right? They're starting off in their early years in those educational institutes. So they're going to come AI ready, Gen AI ready, quantum ready, right? And the second thing is how do we attract and keep that talent? And then what I heard also is us as data leaders are going to be stressed here in the next 5 to 10 years, not personal stress, but more in making ethical decisions, because we'll have so much data in our platforms. And you mentioned governance earlier, which kind of, the outcome of governance is really the data quality, which feeds into AI. So I think a lot of responsibility on the shoulders of data and analytics leaders at this point.
100%.
The question here, one last question on this segment was, Ashwin, is your organization on the peripherals of creating an AI strategy, or is it like at the board level? Where are you? Because different organizations are at different, spectrum, right? Some are like really advanced, especially tech companies, like they have to because they're building the LLMs. However, where is the data center industry generally, and also Flexential maybe?
Yeah. Can't speak to the broader data center industry. I think for Flexential, where we are right now is we are iterating on that AI policy. There's a lot of obligations that we have to our customers and their data that we have to take into account as we come up with what is our overall posture with AI. And we want to be conservative because there's a lot of sensitive data that sits in our data centers, right? And there's a lot of sensitive data that we have in our own four walls that we want to be able to protect. And so we're going through that with our legal team, with our compliance team. We're coming up with something that is pragmatic, that we can apply, and is understandable. Because if your AI policy is not understood by employees, it's very, very hard to get them to adhere to it. And so we're going through, in my opinion, we're going through a very methodical process to make sure we come up with the best thinking. Going back to the conflict, right? We have a lot of conflict around how we put this together, but we're taking a methodical approach when it comes to AI.
Well, that's good to know. And that's great, right? Sometimes, because the industry is maturing and you can learn from, what others are doing. Last few questions here quickly. Executive sponsorship, support from senior leadership. Yeah. How has that shaped what you're trying to do? How critical is it? When should we start thinking about executive sponsorships? Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think it starts on day one, right? And it's very cliche to say you need executive sponsorship, but I'll take that one step further. I think identifying who, you don't have to go and get sponsorship from every executive, right? But identifying who can help push your perspectives and your strategy forward, that's critically important. Second thing I'll say is that you don't want to be thinking so short term that your success and failure is gauged on a short-term win or a short-term loss. So looking out 5 to 7 years from now and being able to set a vision of here's where I think we need to be 5 to 7 years from now, understanding where the rest of the industry groups are, right? Data center space, maybe we are slightly behind our friends in the tech space, but using their example to say, here's where we want to be aspirationally, and setting that vision is very, very important. Oftentimes people in my seat get too caught up with the aspirational and they forget about the tactical, but being able to come back and say, hey, in order to get to this aspired vision, these are the tactical things that we need to do in the next 18 to 24 months, and making sure you're able to hit the milestones as you go about there But in addition to hitting the milestones, being able to articulate, here's the business value that's going to be gleaned from hitting this milestone A versus milestone B versus milestone C, and then being able to revisit that and calibrate as you go along the path. Every vision that I've set and every strategy I've set, I've always given myself the out of saying I have the opportunity to come back and revisit in 12 months, because our business is not going to be the same in 12 months. The industry space is not going to be the same in 12 months. And the world probably is not going to be the same in 12 months. So give yourself the grace and the space to be able to come back and revisit and recalibrate, but try to do your best to stay the course if at all possible.
Yeah, no, very profound. Thank you, Ashwin, because like you said, it's, executive sponsorship. It's hard to define, right? I mean, and I can write a paragraph about it, but it may not be applicable to, when you actually take, we spoke about your 30, 60, 90, 100 days. I mean, I think there's so much overbearance on that. There's so much focus on there. The books written about what your first 90 day and how critical it is. It is critical for a data analytic leader, but there's life after 90 days, right? There's life after the first year. And how are you thinking? How forward thinking you are, and then working your way backwards, right? And having some of that planned in your whether it's formal planning or at least it's in your head. So those are very, very critical points. One last question, so as you're thinking about your analytics strategy, your data strategy, what is one in all of your experiences in the last 5, 6, 7 years? What's one of the underrepresented or underrated capability that you feel people should start thinking about right now if they want to really take forward their strategies and be successful with it?
It doesn't have to be perfect, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. And we oftentimes get into that paralysis of I need to get it perfect before I get it out. What I tell my team is first to market. I don't care if it's perfect, get it out, have somebody look at it and review it and come back and give us feedback. So I'll give you a real example. Tableau Mobile is new for us. We've never had it before. My big thing was let's go find the 5 or 6 KPIs, put it on a mobile. I don't really care how it looks, but let's get it into the hands of some of our leaders and have them give us direct feedback. We had issues, access issues. Oh, I can't read it because my phone is a different form factor. But those are not failures, right? Those are good learnings that we can take and go and apply very quickly. And when I say quickly, I mean, we get an email, we can go and update the Tableau dashboard in 15 minutes and get it back. And so that concept of just being first to market and being the first people to get something out, very, very important. And I would stress for data teams specifically, don't try to be perfect all the time. 80% is good enough. Get something out to your stakeholders, and then they'll probably come back with 10 more questions that you can add as enhancements in the future. But it at least starts the ball moving down the field.
No, you exceeded my expectation there. I was thinking you were going to say, take care of your data governance, data quality. But I think while all of that is great, right, in the capabilities sense, what matters is how you execute and how you think, which is where the critical thinking comes in. So fabulous. I mean, thank you so much, Ashwin. I mean, I think this was, I learn every time I have these conversations, right? I've had mentors, I am a mentor, but every time I speak to a data leader, there's a human behind the leader, right? And through these conversations, you get to see how they have shaped their careers and what thinking they bring to the table, and we can all learn from that. So thank you so much for all of the insights that you provided today. And we should do this again. And I'm really excited about your journey, and I'm looking forward to seeing where it is, every 3 months, every 6 months, and maybe in a year. So thank you.
Absolutely. We'll stay connected. Thank you, Kuldeep. Thank you, Kavya.
Yeah, this was a great conversation. Thank you both so much for leading us through. And thank you to everybody who's listening in on the line. Of course, if you want to see the recording of this session, make sure to follow us on YouTube at Great Data Minds. And then just, one final time, Kuldeep and Ashwin, thank you for such a great conversation. I think, Ashwin, one of my favorite parts was when you linked the scientific method to the approach that data and analytics professionals take. I had never put it together like that. That was really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I didn't know you were both mechanical engineers. But why not? Why wouldn't
We've talked about that before, Kuldeep.
But don't test me on thermodynamics now. Yeah, fail miserably.
That's it. Me too. All right. Thank you guys both so much. Thank you to everybody on the line, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.